Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Finca Tucanes wash processed Ecuador from Blind Tiger Coffee. And there's the bag right there. And Blind Tiger, previously based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I believe now they're based out of Old Town, Maine, and a coffee roaster that has appeared on this channel a couple of times before, including most recently in our most recent coffee roaster tier list, where they did finish in the amazing category. There is a fun backstory behind this coffee, and it starts a couple of weeks ago when I was out at one of my favorite coffee shops, and I noticed that they were carrying Blind Tiger as their guest roaster. And given that I'd had such positive experiences with Blind Tiger in the past, I told the barista to surprise me with either of their two offerings. And I was so impressed with the cup of coffee that they served me that I decided to purchase both coffees, given that I never found out which coffee it was that they served me. And I was actually having a little bit of difficulty differentiating which one of these two coffees it could have been. So this is one of the potential candidates. I'm looking forward to discussing both, as this right here is day 24. Or a special Blind Tiger mug for this review. All right, recipe we settled on for this coffee was a 16:1 water to coffee ratio, brewed at 203 degrees Fahrenheit, and I like this one best through the V60, which indicates a more medium fine grind. Roast profile for Blind Tiger, it reminds me a lot of what Sweet Bloom has done since they've transitioned on over to the Loring, which is very much in line with the light medium American sort of profile, but a slightly lighter version of that. With all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee. Let me pull up the notes. Day 7, first impression. The cup was both wildly sweet and herbal based off of that first try. So there's this wonderful candied sweet component right from the very start that really dominated the cup, and I was quite impressed by that. Additional components included this slight floral factor, as well as an additional kind of citrusy aspect to it, which left this wonderful first impression, and it was very much in line with what they have listed on here: orange, hibiscus, and this Werther's candy, which was a very interesting but kind of apt flavor note. So I experienced all of these things in abundance, most distinctly though this kind of brown candied abundance, so that left a very positive first impression. Day 9. Plenty of candied sweetness yet again, with a slight bit of that sweeter citric aspect to the cup as well. There's a slight bit of this herbal complexity to the cup yet again, but the cup for the most part was really brown candy dominant, which I was very much enjoying. There was depth and vibrancy, which made this another really nice day to this coffee. Day 11, another good day, but slightly less sweet, as it feels a little bit more on the floral side of things as opposed to the sweeter side of things. And given that I'm somebody that really enjoys the sweetness in their coffee, that wasn't the best trade-off. I felt that maybe some slight adjustments needed to be made to improve the overall sweetness from the cup, but there was a slight bit of this candied component in the finish as it does cool down, in addition to this slightly more herbal floral aspect yet again. Day 13, best day to the cup, as it seems to have opened up with a little bit of the reduction in temperature. And that's why we settled on 203, which is a little cooler than we typically brew. But the candied sweetness was back yet again, and it was complemented and contrasted by the floral herbality yet again. Those two things, they're consistent throughout the time drinking this coffee. It was just kind of a trade-off, which one I was going to get a little bit more, which one was going to be the most pronounced. Throughout the entire time drinking it, though, they were very much pronounced. So cup was just sweeter in general, and that was a positive, trending in the right direction. Day 15, cup continues to trend in the right direction, as there were so many of the brown candied aspects this day, and it was by far the most pronounced characteristic. Both brew methods seem to work well in terms of bringing out the sweetness, but we'll get in the next day as to why I preferred the V60 slightly to the Chemex, as the herbality was definitely the secondary factor, with much more of the citric component within this cup too. Day 17, and it started to feel like the best of this coffee was ahead of it, as it reminded me a little bit of the Pepe Hijón, which is a compliment. It's actually a really high compliment, given that the Pepe Hijón is one of my favorite coffees of the entire year. But given that they're both Ecuadorian coffees and they have extremely similar flavor profiles in terms of what they have listed as their notes, a citric aspect, that hibiscus, as well as a kind of candied component to them, it is interesting just how in this kind of middle ground off brew before it reaches room temperature, it kind of opens up in this really, really sweet aspect to it. So it has that yet again. Cup continues to feel like it's improving. But here on day 19 is why I really settle on the V60, as it just weirdly had a little bit more clarity as opposed to the Chemex. The Chemex really seemed to kind of heighten a lot more of the herbal floral complexity within the cup. It does offer plenty of those aspects too, with the additional fruit characteristics. It's a little bit more herbal on this day, but what I really have to say is I kind of miss the citric aspect through the V60. I feel like the V60, correction, through the Chemex. I feel like the Chemex kind of strips away the citric components to the cup, which is nice. It gives a little bit more depth, makes it a little bit more versatile of a cup. Day 21, really been struggling to replicate the earlier days, and that's what I want to say is day 7, day 9, and day 13, I really seemed to get so much of the brown candied aspect to it, but at no point going forward was I able to kind of replicate that to the point where I could have justified a level 5 for that candied sweetness, and I could have justified higher side of the level 4 for just how strong it was, but again, it's very much still present. The herbal florality has just become maybe a little bit more pronounced. And here we are on day 24, and yet again, kind of the candied sweetness is coming back yet again. So it goes in and out, and I think the coffee is just a little sensitive to how you're brewing it. And as a result, it can be a little complex, it can be a little tricky, and that's one of the other reasons why I kind of compared it to the Pepe Hijón, which was actually a more difficult to brew cup of coffee. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we were getting. And a bunch of level 4s. Let's go through those real quick. We'll start with the finish at a level 4. That's not too surprising. I've been kind of harping on this kind of interesting herbal floral complexity to it. If there's somebody that's ever had difficulty maybe kind of picking up on what a hibiscus is supposed to taste like in coffee, I feel like this one really demonstrates that in abundance because it's very clear and very pronounced. So I would say that that's justified there because it does have this herbal finish to the cup. Sweetness level 4, as I've kind of mentioned, on its day, you could maybe justify the low side of level 5 because the brown candied sweetness in this cup was really lovely and really vibrant. So I could see it at that mark. Florality level 4, yes, I've been saying that there were times the kind of floral herbality was the most pronounced characteristic in this cup. Even then, it still very much is in line with that level 4 mark. And then the caramel level 4, as I said in the earlier days, you could kind of bump that all the way up to a level 5 because the brown candy that was coming from it was wild, abundant, vibrant, yet still clean. So really enjoyed the candied sweetness that was coming from it, especially in those earlier days. But I feel like for the most part during the time drinking this coffee, level 4 seems like a perfect fit. Body level 3, yeah, even through the V60, it still kind of has this more middle body thing, but I would say that it's still slightly on the lower side of the level 3 mark. It didn't necessarily have the most body I've experienced from a cup. And here's the thing I want to discuss the most, which is the cleanliness at a level 3, because I looked at this tasting wheel before this review and I knew that I didn't necessarily agree with that as much as I possibly could. I think the reason I put it at the level 3 was maybe this was having one of the off days where it wasn't as good as some of the other days. I feel like level 4 is honestly the best mark for it. Maybe the lower side of level 4, definitely the higher side of level 3 if we placed it at the level 3 mark. As I kind of mentioned, kind of a little tricky at times, mostly due to the kind of herbal complexity with it. It didn't come out as maybe clean and defined as I would necessarily like. And I think maybe one of the other reasons I wanted to showcase that was because the other coffee that we're going to be reviewing was cleaner than this one. It was a very, very clean cup of coffee. But even then, I still think level 4 is probably fair. And if I made the tasting wheel today, I would adjust that to level 4. Acidity though, level 3, it's not necessarily the most acidic cup of coffee, which is a selling point to me. Citrus level 3, that's kind of only experienced through the V60. I could not replicate that through the Chemex, so I like it there. Slight bit of the savory aspect, been hinting at that kind of herbality to it. A slight bit of bitterness. Yeah, I think for the most part I quite like the way that this tasting looks, with the exception of the cleanliness. I definitely am kind of sticking on that because I would definitely adjust that one. All right, my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. I've been saying this entire year that Ecuador has been having a really, really good year. And I think what was kind of tricky about this coffee was I enjoyed it more on the first half than I did on the second half, which is kind of surprising because the other coffee actually went the other way. I enjoyed that coffee a lot more with more time. So that seems to be my thinking with a lot of the Blind Tiger coffees, is I seem to enjoy them a little bit more on the first half as they don't seem to have the same sort of longevity, or maybe I just have a little bit more difficulty with some of them like this one right here than others. Even then, I would say maybe an outside chance in my honorable mentions list. I think that this one was really good. Again, reminding me a lot of the Pepe Hijón is a huge selling point, a huge positive aspect for me because that was one of my favorite coffees of the year, and at times I could kind of see this as maybe Pepe Hijón light. So great compliments to this coffee. Blind Tiger continues to deliver. I still really enjoy what I've had from Blind Tiger recently, very much including this coffee. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to. And those two aspects, I can't highlight and emphasize them enough. If you do like that hibiscus, that kind of herbal florality within it, that's an abundance, but most specifically, the thing that really sold me on this coffee, which was that brown candied sweetness, great aspects to this coffee. One of the better aspects, one of the nicer things I've experienced from a coffee recently, I would say that it was wonderful, especially when I was getting in abundance. That was one of those things where it could have potentially knocked on the door for my top 10 coffees of the year list, because that first half was wonderful. I just wish I could have done a better job of maybe replicating that throughout the time drinking it. But keep those two things in mind. If those are things you really enjoy in coffee, then I think that this one would be a great fit for you. For the most part though, I think I'll leave this review at that. If you by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, we'd love to know your thoughts and impressions of it as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Finca Tucanes, wash processed Ecuador from Blind Tiger Coffee. Thank you for watching.